Very good evening to everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of Eclectica, the Different News. Today, we are going to talk on a very, very interesting and trending topic, AI and the future of healthcare, artificial intelligence and healthcare. Well, I have an eminent scientist professor from Australia, and he is none other than Professor Erwin Loh. So Professor Erwin is the Group Chief Medical Officer and Group General Manager of Clinical Governance, St. Vincent's Health, Australia. So we will have a lot of discussions and we will get fantastic insights from Professor Erwin. So without doing any delay, let me call in my guest here today in front of you.
Hi, Gagi. Look, it's a pleasure to be here. I thank you for your invitation.
Thank you.
Look, you have a very interesting podcast, and I'm glad to be a guest.
Thank you, Professor Erwin. I know you are a very busy person, but you came on my show. It's a privilege and it's a pleasure to have you here today. And the topic that we are talking is really, really something that we really need to talk about because a lot of buzz is going on with AI. I think that made us, intrigued me to get in touch with you and understand more from you so that we can have some clarity on what is AI and how is our healthcare in totality with this technology that we are talking about today. So I have a lot of questions. So if you allow me, I can just start with them. Thank you so much. Well, definitely since we are talking about AI, so I would like to ask you that what do you think how AI or artificial intelligence is being utilized in our healthcare industry at present, and what are some of the most exciting applications you have seen in your experience?
Yeah, it's a good question, Gagi. Look, AI clearly is now part of our lives. We are all carrying smartphones that has AI inbuilt in them, so we are quite used to it. It's in the background. In healthcare, actually, AI is used quite extensively now. There are 5 main areas. I think first area is around medical specialties that are involved in image recognition. So I'm talking about pathology, where you've got pathologists looking at slides. I'm talking about radiology, where radiologists are looking at x-rays. AI is very good at, because it's a machine, it's very good, and in fact, much better than human beings at recognizing patterns, looking at images, and detecting changes that to the human eye we might not be able to pick up. So, and that area of image recognition has moved into ophthalmology, looking at the eye and the retina, and also dermatology, looking at skin cancers and moles as well. So that's actually happening today. The second area that AI is very useful in health is around data analytics. We've got so much data now, we've got so much research out there. AI is helping us to collate that, to analyze that, and to summarize all the new things that are being published in the area of medical research. So that AI like that's being integrated into electronic medical record systems, EMRs. For example, we know that Watson, that's an IBM system, is helping oncologists with cancer protocols. So that is another big area that is actually in production right now, and it's supporting our clinicians. The third area is around it's where AI can help us with prediction. It can look at a lot of health information and help us to predict patients who might be getting sick or who might be at risk of coming back to hospital. So a lot of EMR systems now have AI algorithms that screen for sepsis, so people who might have blood infections. We use at St. Vincent's, we use an AI system to help us predict who might have to come back to hospital, and so we plan for that. So that's the kind of third area. The fourth area is around automation of simple things. So, RPA, robotic process automation. We use, there are vendors out there that supply us with software to help us to roster our staff, to automate our procurement ordering. So again, that's not restricted to health, but we apply that in health. And last but not least, we're using AI to help us select patients to join clinical trials. So AI is very useful, and there are vendors supplying us with software that helps us to look at patients when they get admitted And if they're appropriate for a particular clinical trial, they get selected into that trial automatically. So those are those areas at the moment. In terms of exciting applications, I think what's very exciting is that we're moving AI from the more kind of administrative, automated side of things into the diagnosis, into replacing actual doctors when it comes to diagnosing illnesses and then providing treatment. So that's the really exciting development. For example, the NHS in the UK, they've partnered with Babylon AI to provide general practice type diagnosis. So replacing primary care physicians. And I think everyone here has heard of ChatGPT by now. It's not even a year old, but ChatGPT is having a huge impact in health, helping us to summarize medical records, write letters to doctors and all of that. And I think into the near future, AI is going to combine with genomics and help us to understand our DNA, and then help us not only read our DNA, but help us to write it, to moving into gene editing using CRISPR technology. So that's the exciting bit.
That's so much. Thank you for that extensive plethora that you showed us. It is really, really promising. So my next question is that, as you said, many things in terms of diagnostics. So what do you think are the potential benefits of AI in improving patient care and healthcare outcomes? Can you give us any specific examples for this? It will be very interesting to know.
Yeah, I mean, so you're right. The definitely potential benefits of AI. AI will help us, as I was saying before, to be able to be more accurate in our diagnosis. It will help us to pick up cancers earlier. We can combine AI with blood biomarkers and be able to do things that we haven't been able to do before. For example, we can now do liquid biopsies, taking blood, and then the AI can help us to pick up either hormones or chemicals or cells in the blood that can indicate that there is a cancer happening. We can do that now, combine AI to help us predict people who might develop Alzheimer's, either through AI helping us analyze brain images or even through looking at blood tests. There's quite a few research studies that have been published recently around this. So it's better diagnosis, better kind of picking up illness, better screening so that we can prevent illness from progressing. And then AI will also help us to develop better treatment protocols. It will help us with decision making, help us to find the best treatment for diseases, and help us, doctors and nurses keep up with the latest research. So much is happening right now. It's really hard for the average doctor and nurse and other health practitioner to be up to date with the latest treatments available. So the AI can hopefully help us do that. And in the end, AI is going to help us to provide safer care. It's going to help us to prevent mistakes, errors in health. In terms of an example that I can share, at some instance, we partner with different AI vendors, but one of the AI companies that we are working with, they have provided us with an algorithm that can help us to select and predict patients that are better off being looked after in their home. So we've got a hospital in a home service, a virtual care service, and rather than in the past, we would use a human being to look at lists of patients, and then they would decide, okay, this patient actually is more appropriate to go to be looked after at home because it's better for the patient, better for us. Now we use AI, and in fact, when we've done a study on this, the AI is better at picking the right person than a human being. So AI can help us to be able to automate some of the things that we use humans for.
Wow, this is very, very interesting that you said, and I think you have a lot of publications as well. So, on these aspects as well. So, I think it would be very useful information. And by the way, whoever is seeing us, to my audience, I would say that if you are not following Dr. Erwin on LinkedIn, then you are missing out a lot because his shares are so insightful. So, I mean, I learn a lot from your LinkedIn posts actually. So, next question. Like, I was just thinking, like, with this, increase AI, use of AI, we understand that it is highly potential, it has advantages. So, Are there any ethical areas or considerations and challenges that we really need to think on and address? What do you think about this?
Yeah, sure. So this is an area of interest of mine. So clearly AI has a potential for a lot of benefits, but just like any new technology, there are downsides, right? And we have to be careful in deploying AI without any safeguards. It's an area of interest of mine because, I'm trained as a doctor, but I've also trained as a lawyer. I've worked as a lawyer, and there are ethical and medical legal issues to do with AI when it comes to health. As you say, I've published papers on this topic. And so I think the first thing is at the moment, when a healthcare worker looks after a patient, a human being is making decisions around that patient. So I decide that you need a particular medication, or I'm going to operate on you, and I am doing the operation on you. As AI becomes more complex and takes over human beings, the AI will start making decisions. The AI is going to say, this disease needs this drug. Right. Right now, the doctor still needs to say, I agree, yes. Yeah, right now, the doctor still controls the surgical robot. But there will come a time, and the analogy here is with the military. So right now, there are drones flying around, and they're controlled by AI, and the AI will target human beings on the ground, and the AI will then tell a human drone pilot, shoot or fire, right? Now, a human being presses the button and says fire. Right now, there's a debate from the generals and the heads of the military. They're arguing that getting a human being to press fire is wasting time. Like, you're wasting 3 to 5 seconds. The AI is so accurate, let AI decide to shoot. And so that may happen. So if you then let AI decide to shoot, it means AI is deciding to kill a human being, right? So who's responsible for that? Because the AI is making a decision, not a human being. So if it's a wrong person, who's responsible? It's the same issue and concept in health. If there is a mistake, if the AI says, prescribe this drug, and by then, the AI becomes a gold standard, right? You can't argue with the AI, because you don't know as much as the AI now. The AI is looking at all the new research, looking at the human being, just knows everybody has, personalized, and everybody has a personalized an organism with the genes and the history, and it tells you something, you have to follow it. Because there will come a time when if you don't follow AI, you're going to be seen to be negligent. So, but what happens if it's wrong, right? Or what happens if the robot does something wrong? Who is accountable? So that's one huge area of, is an ethical and legal issue about accountability and liability and who makes the decision. Because then if something goes wrong and someone sues, who do they sue? Do they can't sue the AI is machine or software. At this point, it is not a legal entity. Do they sue the hospital? Of course they would. Do they sue the company? Do they sue the programmer? Do they sue the doctors and nurses who are around? It's a complex issue. So it's one whole area of medical negligence. Intellectual property is the other area. There was a case, quite well known in the US from 3 years ago, probably. A scientist developed an AI, told the AI to go onto the internet, try to solve some problems. It solved 2 problems. It created a new way of a cap and a new way of lighting. And the scientist wanted to patent the inventions, but make the AI the owner. Because the scientist rightly said, I had nothing to do with the invention. I did not look at the problem. I did not create the solution. So it shouldn't be my name, it should be AI. Now, AI is not a real person. And in the US, the USPTO said, no, you can't, because only human beings can own patents and intellectual property. So then he applied for patents around the world. And in Australia, I think a year or 2 ago, the patent office actually allowed it and said, yeah, actually, you're right. AI can have ownership. That was a huge announcement. Now, it's been appealed and the federal court has said, no, that's not true. Only human beings can own IP. But the whole issue of IP is another area of law that we need to look at. In terms of other legal issues, privacy is one. I mean, ChatGPT is a great example where if you ask questions for it to give you an answer, that question itself has a lot of information, especially if you start putting in health information, which some people have done. They've chucked in an ECG to tell ChatGPT, tell me what the problem is, and ChatGPT will tell you. But that ECG is now in someone's database, right? And it's in the internet, and we don't know how it's going to be used. So privacy is a big issue. Security is another issue. And then criminals are using AI now to do crime, right? So there are deep fakes. We can now make a picture of me or you that looks exactly like us using our voices. Cyber criminals are copying our voice off voicemail or recordings. I mean, right now, we're being recorded onto YouTube, but a hacker could copy the voice and use AI to make phone calls and pretend to be us. So that's already happening. People are copying voices of CEOs. So crime is another area. I think law is one thing, but we've touched on the ethical issues of AI, and the ethical issues of AI is to do with how do you teach AI ethics, right? So because healthcare decision making is filled with ethics. We are making ethical decisions on our time as clinicians because we have to decide: do we treat you? Do we treat someone else? If there's one ICU bed and there's an older person and a younger person, who gets it? It's an ethical question, right? Because there's just not enough money or resources to treat everybody. So you've got to have to keep making ethical decisions all the time. When we pass that on to AI, how do you teach it ethics? There is, it's like the trolley problem, from 1970, right?
Right.
The trolley problem. And this debate, this struggle is real right now for self-driving car programmers. If you have a self-driving car which uses AI, it's got to drive around. But when it comes to avoiding accidents, right? Does it save the pedestrian and kill the driver, or does it save the driver or kill the pedestrian when there's an accident? If there are multiple pedestrians, who does the car hit? The older person or the younger person? You know what I mean? You can program that. You can make decisions around it. But that's ethical decision making. That is ethics. So teaching AI ethics is interesting. And the other huge area in AI, sorry, I'm talking a lot. But this is
no, absolutely. No problem.
The other huge area for AI is bias. AI, just like any learning system, has to learn. So in narrow AI and image recognition, you give it a lot of images and it learns what's normal, what's abnormal. That's how it learns. The problem is if you give it the wrong data set or biased data set, it learns bias automatically. The classic example is MIT's did an experiment with an AI. It exposed it to the world and to the internet, and the AI came back to be sexist and racist because the internet has a lot of sexist and racist stuff. So whatever you feed the AI, it will learn. And a lot of the learning could be unconscious. We all know the story of the Google AI that could not recognize African Americans or African skins, dark skinned people, because it was trained on white skinned people. So, AI could learn bias, and this is a danger. And in Australia, we had a very recent real life case in the government where, it's the government and the UK did the same. The government, instead of using human beings to make decisions around social security, you use a system, a computer system, which looked at someone and then decides you are eligible for social security and benefits or you're not. The problem is that because the key issue here is with simple algorithms, you know how it thinks because you program it. But with deep learning systems, machine learning, deep learning systems that uses neural networks that are modeled on the human brain, it learns, but you don't know how. You just don't know. So the AI system can make decisions that a human will go, hang on, I wouldn't have made that, but why? And that was the problem with these systems, And so robo-debt is the whole kind of crisis and controversy. There's a whole royal commission into it in Australia because this robo-debt system started deciding that a lot of people owed money to the government when in fact they might not have because it just did its own thing. So that's one of the potential downsides of AI if you don't have governance around it.
Yeah, I think it is a very extensive information that you shared with us, and I mean, amazing. So there are a lot of things. Still, we have to go a long way. But yes, as far as AI and its potential, that is also always on an up curve. Professor Erwin, how do you see AI transforming the role of healthcare professionals in the future? Do you think will it replace certain jobs or enhance existing roles? What is your opinion on this?
Sure. So one thing to say is that healthcare, like any other industry, is subject to transformation when new technologies arise. Is when you go back 1,000 years ago, we didn't know how much about science and the human body, and so we were doing things back then that we don't do now. And roles have transformed significantly. You go back to the Middle Ages, doctors didn't do operations at all, right? Doctors were all physicians. That's the oldest college, medical specialty college in the world. It goes back thousands of years. They all just thought about things, and surgeons didn't exist. People who did operations were the barbers, people who cut hair and who learned their craft in the battlefield. Now, surgeons would argue they are the highest kind of trained doctors. They do things that physicians don't do, right? So the roles of healthcare professionals will change over time, and AI is no different. AI is a new technology that will significantly transform the role of healthcare professionals. I think the first thing it's doing right now is removing a lot of the administrative tasks, a lot of the sort of simpler things that can be offloaded to that doesn't need much kind of cognition and the skills of a doctor. So automation is going to help, and that is a good thing. It's going to free up clinicians so that they can focus more on the craft, but also on compassionate, direct human care. Provide the human touch, which machines can't do. So first thing is that it will enhance the role of healthcare professionals. But I think your question also includes whether it replaces certain jobs, and that's the key here. There will come a time in the near future where AI will be sophisticated enough that it will start to replace some of the things that human healthcare workers do, some of the things that doctors do. So in pathology and radiology, it's already happening, right? In pathology, in the past, you had microbiologists looking at antibiotic agar plates to look at sensitivities, right, and resistance. AI does that now. In the past, you have pathologists looking at pap smears to diagnose, to figure out, whether there's cervical cancer. AI does that now. So radiology is the same. So the role of the pathologist and radiologist is going to change. It's no different to when the first machines came out and gave you a range for blood glucose or potassium and told you this is abnormal. You still need a pathologist, but a frontline clinician could read that and say, actually, I don't need the pathologist to tell me this is an abnormal cholesterol. I just know because the machine has been calibrated. We know the range. So it'd be similar, right? The AI is gonna spit out a radiology or pathology report that's gonna say this is cancer, and this is not, and they'll help the oncologist. Now, that's in diagnostics, but then we're going to move to more complex diagnostics. So more the things that GPs do, before they refer someone to a specialist. It may be the AI can take that over, right? So again, that's the next phase. I think the final frontier actually is the surgical procedures, right? Surgeons are sitting around going, you still need me because robots are not going to do what I do. Again, MIT, they've got the STAR robot, a surgical automated robot. In 2018, it was cutting as well as a person. 2017, cutting as well. 2018, suturing as well. 2021 or 2022, I think it was last year. 2022, the same robot has advanced so that it could autonomously anastomose 2 bits of bile together. Very complex surgery. Well, complex. And so surgical robots are going to happen, right? At the moment, the surgeon using surgical robots, they're basically like playing a computer game. It's like the drone pilots. They're using joysticks and just controlling robots. I mean, it's not a huge step for that to automate a lot. that you'll be what radiation oncologists do. They just kind of supervise machines, maybe. So and then who knows? Because AI still got a long way to go, and it's come a long way in a very short time. So I think it remains to be seen how much of the healthcare worker role it replaces. It may be that we'll have a healthcare workforce that is not human, and then and maybe if that's not a bad thing. Maybe just free up the human healthcare workers to provide the compassionate care.
Right, right. So thank you so much. I mean, so interesting things that we are learning today from you, talking about AI in future of our healthcare. So, what are the main obstacles or barriers in the widespread adoption of AI in healthcare? What do you think? Is it like education or people, just a mindset block? So, or any other technical block? What do you think? What are the main obstacles while adopting AI?
Yeah. Sure. I mean, I think there are a few things. I've already touched on the legal and ethical kind of issues.
Right.
But having said that, those things are not big barriers because people are just deploying AI, because a lot of the AI vendors just approach clinicians directly and say, here, you can use this for free. And, people just use it. So I think the main kind of barrier is, number one, health in general, because we deal with life and death and human lives, our risk appetite is low. There is a low risk tolerance in health. It's very conservative. We don't like to introduce new things without proper governance, which is a good thing, right? Just like, and I think the whole governance structures in health and the regulators, they are catching up to AI. Only recently, the US FDA and then in Australia, the TGA has treated AI as a medical device, software as a medical device. So it's been regulated now. You have to have approval from the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Administration in Australia, just like a drug or a device, right? Which is not a bad thing. But so I think that's one thing. It's the risk appetite. No one wants to kind of approve AI willy-nilly without proper clinical trials, and that's one of the challenges. Actually, is there's a lack of robust randomized controlled trials comparing AI to standard care to show that AI is better. Right? There has been some trials; they're all done in experimental settings, but not in production, not in real life settings, and it's or real world settings. It's interesting. So that's one thing. Cost is the other one, right? New technologies tend to be more expensive initially, so I think. AI is no different. A lot of the systems are not cheap to properly, deploy across an enterprise. They're not cheap. I mean, the vendors tend to say, yeah, it's free for you initially, but then there's a cost. Now, the link to that is the fact that we want to protect our health information and the privacy issues in letting vendors have access to your patients' medical records. As we move into the future, health information will become the new oil that will run, AI systems. AI systems need data. They can't work without information. And hospitals in general have that information. And so AI vendors want that information because that trains their AI algorithms, and which means they can sell it. So the AI models need all this data. And so it's about, again, we are very cautious in sharing the data. There are laws to protect the data. You've got to get consent from the patients. So it's not as simple as, just use it. And at the NHS, there's health services in the US have all got into trouble by breaching patient privacy because they've let Google or IBM have access to patient data without patient consent. So I think that's it. The other barrier really is the fact that, I've read a lot of studies that have been published to show amazing results, area under the curve, very high accuracy comparing AI to humans. But they're all done in experimental settings. when people have actually tried to use the same system in the real world, AI doesn't work. And there's been quite a few studies to show that. And researchers in this space have talked about it. What happens in silico or in the lab may not be applied or actually translate to the real world. So there is that need to start. And the other thing as well is, and the studies have shown this, one system that you develop in a hospital, this is a classic case of AI diagnosing COVID, for example, or lung cancer in a hospital. When they took the same model, and this is trained on x-rays in that hospital, you move it to another hospital, it stops working. So, and no one really knows why, because it's machine learning, right? So something about AI being very contextual, localized to the setting that they've been trained on, it may not be translatable to another, or transferable to another hospital or to another state or to another country, right? So you got to think about that. So those are kind of the main barriers. And ultimately, I think it's still not proven, even though the research is very compelling, that AI ultimately is safe. And we just, just like in self-driving cars, with Teslas driving themselves and having accidents, we haven't had that in health because health's very, very structured, but we don't want to have that in health. We don't want to have an autonomous robot kind of start killing people. So I think those are the main barriers, is the safety concerns and the governance concerns.
Thank you. Can you tell us some of the interesting or any ongoing research or developments in AI that holds promise for revolutionizing the diagnosis or treatment of diseases? Anything that is very recent which comes to your mind?
Yeah, I think the two big areas are, there are three. I think one is ChatGPT, right? Generative AI and large language models. They've just kind of emerged into the scene at the end of last year. And they've transformed a lot of industries already. They're going to production. They've just come out live, and now all the big tech companies all have their own versions. The latest versions of GPT-4 are amazing, to be honest.
Right.
It's impacting music, arts, you name it. And so in health, there are services now that offer similar models to help doctors write notes, to write letters to other doctors, to write reports, summarize things. It's amazing. The question is it mature enough to be in production? That's the question. Because, there was an article recently where a lawyer was using ChatGPT to write up legal briefs, and it was found that it was making up cases. Like, it just made up cases. Hallucinations is what they call it. So things that do not exist, it just makes it up. And so there is a risk, right? But ChatGPT, if you look at the recent studies, and everything's just recent, it's passing medical exams. It's passing USMLE exams, passing radiology specialty exams. The most recent study showed that it failed the gastroenterology exams. That's interesting. The passing score was 70%. It only got 65. But it's getting there, right? But I think, and generative AI technology, it's amazing because what it can do is it can translate big data into simple to understand concepts and write it out in simple language. And so we already know that there's a lot of work happening with reading people's thoughts and translating it. So there are implants now, and then people are now using translating EEGs into images and thoughts. In the past, it was just data that computers had to translate. People have used ChatGPT. There was a recent article. It's been in the media. So that using EEG, ChatGPT can tell what you're thinking.
Oh my God.
No, you can just do it, right? And without implants. And so they got people to actually read, to think of a story. ChatGPT just wrote it out. It's not the same thing that you're thinking. So it could, it was a very specific application. It's not simply reading anyone's mind. It's a very specific experiment, but it's a proof of concept. And so before ChatGPT, we weren't able to do it. So it's amazing. So that's opened up a whole new area. That's one area. I think I was talking about the combination of AI and genomics. I think that is already happening, and that's going to open up a new area of personalized medicine and genetic engineering that's going to transform medicine. I think that's amazing, to be honest. So I think those two are the big things. And then the third thing is then applying AI to robotics. I think that's going to be huge. Right. Robots when it comes to surgery, but also nursing robots and other types of robots.
So I mean, the information you are giving here today, it seems like I'm watching a sci-fi movie. So really AI reading the mind and interpreting thoughts. It is something which is really.
It sounds like science fiction, yes. But it's happening today. I mean, this is all. And you refer to my LinkedIn. I mean, I'm sharing all this research on my LinkedIn, so you can look it up. It's there.
Sure. So Dr. Erwin, that you talked about personalized medicine. My next question was that only, that how can you are telling that it is going to revolutionize when it comes to personalized medicine. So what role can AI play in personalized medicine and precision healthcare, for that matter?
Great. So we've gone through a few revolutions in health, right? So in the olden days, it was all about eminence-based care. Eminence-based care meaning if you're an eminent doctor, you have your opinion, you tell the patient, this is what I think. Another doctor comes along and says, no, I actually think this. I think you need this treatment or you need this surgery. I'm going to do it this way. We've moved from that to evidence-based care. So we've looked at the latest evidence, the latest research, done all the clinical trials for lots and lots of people, and we found out for this population of people, for the average way of treating them is the best way, right? And we've moved now to personalized medicine, where instead of treating the average, and the average might not be applicable to everybody, because the average clinical trial is mainly male, mainly Caucasian, mainly middle-aged. That's the population that's being tested on. So if you're a woman, if you're non-white, if you are a child or older, the drug or the surgery might not apply to you. So AI is going to help us to personalize it to each individual, and it's to do with the fact that AI can help us analyze a person's genomics. I mean, the human genome has only just recently been completed and completed completely. And now they're looking at the human genome, not a single human genome, but multiple human genomes, and combining that information into a library. AI is going to help us to analyze that, and it's already been doing that. It's helped us to identify genes to do with height, genes to do with intelligence, things that we wouldn't have figured it out because it's too much data. And parallel to AI kind of developments, we've had this whole genetic revolution, right? The founder of the CRISPR genetic engineering technology, Elizabeth Doudna, and I can't remember the other lady's name. They both won the Nobel Prize a couple of years ago for their discovery about 10 years ago. It's only been 10 years old, right? But now we're cutting genes, and they're doing it in human beings. They've cured humans of thalassemia or beta, of sickle cell anemia, like individuals, and they've just replaced the genes, and they haven't needed transfusions. So AI can help us, and those are single gene defects that CRISPR can fix, but they're complex genes, multiple genes that hopefully, if you can combine AI to CRISPR, we can not only give people the right drugs, because there's pharmacogenomics now. Currently, and I train in psychiatry, if I want to prescribe an antidepressant for a patient, I will say, okay, here, try this. You gotta wait 3 months. Right. If it doesn't work, or if you get side effects, try another one, wait another 3 months. Try another one, because it takes that long to work. Pharmacogenomics means that I can look at your genome. I can figure out, actually, your genome tells me these drugs are not going to work, but this drug will work. I'm going to give you a drug straight up that will work for you. And there are companies now that actually offers that, right? How accurate, it's debatable still, but it is happening in real life. So AI will help us to be able to take that next step to be more accurate in our figuring out, a person's genome. And it's not just genomics, the other omics, proteomics, epigenomics. I mean, we're learning so much more about every single human being and how different they are and how we interact with our environment, with food and with drugs. And then that way we can personalize our care. It's the same thing with oncology now. In the past, we just give everybody the same chemotherapy and just work out what works. Now, we know different types of breast cancer, for example, different types of breast cancer genetics need different types of chemotherapy and different types of hormone therapy. And so AI is going to help us personalize that even more. And in the future, we'll have the evidence, but then everyone's going to have their own care. Everyone's just going to have, this is for you because you are different to everyone else. Does that make sense? So I think AI is going to help us do that.
I think we are not very far away from seeing those applications of AI. We are advancing a very good way in science. Very fast. Are there any potential risks or limitations associated with AI in healthcare that we should be aware of?
Yeah, look, I think I've mentioned a few already. I've talked about the ethical issues, the bias, the legal complications, the governance risks, the safety risks. So there are the privacy and security risks. I think there are quite a few things already that we're all aware of, which is partly why AI is slower to be used in health compared to other industries. It's because of the fact that in health, we're dealing with human lives and we want to take things carefully. It's still accelerating very, very fast, to be honest, but slower than other industries.
Yeah. So we are at the concluding part of our conversation. It is so interesting that I think we can talk hours together. Listening to you is fantastic. Looking ahead, what are your predictions for the future of AI in healthcare?
So my view is this, is that AI will definitely transform the face of health. And it will do it in ways that today you and I cannot imagine as yet. Just like, you go back 50 years ago, people would not have imagined that we could manipulate the human genome, or we could treat people using magnets, in the brain. It'll be the same, with AI. There will be things that will be happening that we won't know. I think one of the things that the AI researchers are really debating at the moment, and you might have seen the media releases around this, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, talked about it, is that AI, there's an existential risk to humanity, there's a threat to humanity from AI. Because AI, if you let it get out of control, could completely take over humanity or destroy us. Right? So I think if we can survive that, if we can, there's this is science fiction. We're going to science fiction again, The Matrix, Terminator. But, to be fair, it's a real risk because AI will become smarter than humans. There's no question about it. If you think about the evolution of life, right, and people have written about it, so this is not my original idea. We are biological life, right? Biological life, and then we have developed sentience and intelligence. One could argue, how intelligent are we really, right? And then as biological life, we develop machine life. And now we've got machine life. You become self-replicating at some point. It develops its own sentience, its own self-awareness. AI hasn't reached there yet, maybe, but some people have argued maybe it has. Even if an AI has reached self-awareness, would it tell us? Because we might switch it off, right? So you might not. We don't know, right? But again, this is moving a bit into science fiction, but this is kind of philosophy and thinking now. AI will then become smarter than us. People have drawn this scale around the singularity. They think it will happen in 2045. People have written about it. Singularity is when a single AI is smarter than every single human combined. At the moment, AI is probably smarter than a mouse, probably smarter than a human, maybe. But we're talking about, because there's artificial narrow intelligence, which is what we've got. There's artificial general intelligence, where an AI is like a human. Then there's artificial super intelligence, ASI, where that AI is smarter than every single human being combined. All right. When that happens, we don't know what it's going to think. It's going to think quicker than us. If you think about it, right now, you and I, we are bags of flesh with hormones controlling, making us react to things, and our brain is working in single tasks. We can't really multitask properly at the speed of electricity, neurons, right? Electrons. We are creating quantum computers right now, right? Quantum computers using photonic chips, light. They're not electrons, not electric, light, photonic chips. And they're in production. So AI is going to think, and AI is going to think much quicker than us in the speed of light. You know, think about multiple things at the same time using quantum physics, right? You know, it's going to, like, we are not that smart. Okay, think about it. I'm not that smart. You're not that smart, because at the moment I'm just talking using words, and AI is just going to go just download it to another AI. This is what I think. This is what I know. Do you know what I mean? Like, so how do we even compete with that? And what does that even mean to us? You know, would AI just think, yeah, we're the next step of evolution. You guys are like primates and monkeys or bacteria, really. Machine intelligence will take over. Maybe it would. Maybe that's why some people argue if you're ever going to meet aliens, it's going to be machines, because why wouldn't it be? You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that is a real kind of debate. And the people working with AI is talking about this right now. There's a Center for AI Safety. They've signed this declaration saying that, you know, we want to warn the world of the risks of AI. I mean, to have some governance around the development of AI. We'll see what comes out of that.
Thank you, Professor Erwin, for your time. It was fantastic talking to you, and it was a pleasure having you. And I think we went through a world of science fiction, but it is a reality, and also we got so much of insights of the future. It is a very, very promising area, and probably we are, as you said, we are not away from all these meeting our own self as a machine, probably. So, but for the good of science, definitely for the good of science. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for watching this episode, and stay tuned, and don't forget to subscribe my channel. See you again with another episode of Eclectica again next Friday. Thank you so much.
See you all.